Hey, welcome to the Full-Stack Friday show. That's Friday with an AI. I'm Ed Charbeneau, and this is Chris DeMars joining me today. How you doing, Chris?
Oh, brother, I got my coffee. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Today is going to be kind of the introduction day for the show. Everybody's kind of talking about AI these days, and it's a very confusing landscape of things. I've
Yes.
been kind of dabbling in this field for several years now. And I was kind of shouting at developers years ago, like, if you're not learning about AI, you're going to be behind. And everybody was like, yeah, they looked at me like I was the crazy guy, like every city has with like the A-frame billboard wrapped around their chest, like shouting that the world's ending and ringing a bell.
Mhm.
And then all of the sudden, like out of nowhere, we get Chat GPT and it blows everybody's minds, and now every company you look at's an AI company, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of where we're at. And
Yeah.
this show, we're going to give it to you straight. I'm not the kind of person that sits there and repeats a bunch of marketing mumbo jumbo and throws buzzwords at you. I'm gonna tell you what these things do and try to figure out why it's important to us, why we need to pay attention to them.
Because
I
Skynet, that's the reason why, because Skynet.
Exactly. When you talk about AI, at least up until maybe the recent year here, that's been everybody's concept of what it is, right?
Yeah.
Like they've seen it in movies, everybody pictures HAL or Terminator or something like
Yeah.
that. And that is actually a very different concept than what we work with as an AI today. Those are like general purpose AIs. They are not what we're dealing with today. Like we have very narrow focused AIs. The kind that you see in those movies is not something that's even possible by today's standards.
Right.
So you need for something like that, you need an AI that can take on tasks that it hasn't ever encountered before and be able to learn how to overcome those problems and do so with like its own, cognitive intelligence. We just don't have that.
Yeah.
That's way out there still. I think like the best they've done to replicate even something like that was like they replicated like a very simple like single-celled worm-like organism, and that took like an extreme amount of computing power to do.
Mhm.
And we are so much more advanced than that as people. Like that's just not in the ballpark.
That's so gnarly, though, to think, like, we had to use some type of compute to bring something to life when we have years and years and years and years and years of evolution, right? Where, like, it just happened. Right?
Yeah.
Why do we have to throw technology into the mix? You know what I'm saying? That kinda scares me a little bit.
ChatGPT is pretty cool until you start looking under the hood of all of it. And it's still amazing science, right? Don't get me wrong. It's just a technological breakthrough on its own, but it's still a lot of math. It's still a lot of statistical analysis and stuff that's happening, and it's running through an algorithm trying to predict the next word in a sentence based on the sentence that you gave it.
Mhm.
So again, it's not smart. It's just
Right.
taking a big pool of data that we already have. It has analyzed it and come up with functions that it can run based on the input to give you, predict words in a sentence.
Yeah.
And when you break it down, it's oversimplified, obviously, but this is only a 2-hour show.
Right.
And we have to talk about more than just this. When you oversimplify it like that, it kind of takes some of the wind out of its sails. It's it is more than like a parlor trick, but it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, right? You start peeking behind the curtain, and you realize it's not this sentient thing. We see a lot of stuff marketed to us, and a lot of people are probably trying to figure out what it is that they should be doing with AI to get it in their apps. I know one of the questions you had, Chris, was like, what even is out there to use and how do I use it? I think that's going to be
Mhm.
the basis for the show. We will get into like live coding, build some apps and things. So one of the things I had on my agenda was to look through like what services are available out there, and I've been using some. This is the Azure portal, Chris. I Have you ever been in the Azure portal?
No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah, this is quote the back end. This is the biggest back end I think you can probably get.
Wow.
Um, so if you wanted to host an app, uh, this is where you'd host it.
Hmm.
If you want to create like a serverless cloud platform, you could do that here. There's a million things that you could do in Azure services, more than I could talk about. I don't
Yeah.
know all of the things. This is just like the basic getting started page. Like you can host first virtual machines, key vaults, data factories, do automation. You can, yeah, basically host an entire company's infrastructure
That's cool.
end to end here. So one of the things that is in Azure Portal is AI services. You can see a couple of those up here. So we've got Azure AI services. I have, let's see, we've got Open AI. That that sound familiar?
Mhm. Yeah.
AI search, computer vision, face AI. So there's all sorts of stuff in here that we can play with. Um, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? That once you spin one of these up, you then are given another portal that is similar to this one, but it's all focused on AI. So
Mhm.
this portal that we're looking at now is the general dashboard for anything Azure, and then depending on what resource you're spinning up here, you may have additional portals that are within here. These are, I believe, called blades. Inside of each of these blades, you may have, like this screen has some functionality to it. And then if I go into like a specific instance here, it may actually just bounce out to another ex- um, dashboard altogether.
Cool.
So if we were to go back to the Azure portal here, and if I were to create a new resource, and let's say I want to do some AI and machine learning, I've got all of these options. Um, if I wanted to do like OpenAI, for example, let's see which one of those is this under AI services subcategory here. Let's see, where is it? If I could just go up to the top, OpenAI, Azure OpenAI. If I wanted to create that, I would hit create. And then we would go through provisioning a new AI service. So as a Microsoft MVP, I get some money to throw at this in credits every month. And that's where you see this subscription here. And there's also like a pay as you go
Mhm.
model, stuff like that. And you would create a new resource group here. Let's go ahead and try to spin one up just to show you how all this works. We'll do a Friday as the resource group. Oops. Okay, there. So we'd create a new resource group. This region lets you pick, what area of the planet is this application going to generally be accessed from? So we can get the fastest latency possible, lowest
Mhm.
latency possible. And you can deploy these, basically all over the world in the locations that you need to access them from. Then we'd name the instance of it. And then we select a pricing tier. And this is where things can get problematic. So we probably go to this full pricing details here and see For Azure OpenAI, I think it's still in a beta pricing option to where it's technically free, but you have to sign up for a preview access to it.
Mhm.
And then once that preview period's over, that instance will get kind of either kicked to the lowest tier, the free tier, and then restricted, and you'll have to upgrade, or they'll just kill it altogether, and you'll have to create a new one with whatever the live GTM is.
Hmm.
So right now it's in a beta, so I think that's why it's standard S0. S0 is usually the lowest tier and free. So let's see. Yeah, I don't see the tiers listed on here. It's just telling me what the different models are.
Right.
But generally, all services have that tier of like standard 0, and then it goes through like enterprise and all of that.
Mhm.
So 0, and I believe again that one's free because it's in a beta. I had to request. I fill out a request form to get into this screen even.
Gotcha.
So we'll go next on here. Then you could set up security. So you could um, set this up within your company's firewall, for example. If you're running everything off of Azure, I'm just going to have it open so we can access it from wherever we want. And this is organizational to help find it within the Azure portal, I believe. So we don't need to do any of that. And now it's provisioning this OpenAI um, resource. So we go ahead and hit create, and it's deploying it. So it's just kind of a click through wizard. Like we're not doing any coding or anything crazy like that, which you can do like scripting and things to launch this stuff from like a command line terminal and um, CI/CD systems and things. But if you're just manually doing it, you just step through the wizards
Right.
and wait for it to complete. And there's a little notification thing that'll come up when the resources are deployed. And that's how you would spin up an open AI service in Azure Portal. It's
Nice.
basically step by step. It's not anything crazy. So now it's ready to go. We can pin it to our dashboard, and it is, let's see, okay, pin to dashboard. It should show up here. It kind of looks like it's not refreshing or something. Recent. It's not showing up in recents. Uh, let's try that dashboard again. Details. Missing ARM resource ID. Good old fashioned demo fail.
Mhm.
Let's
The way
try
it
all
works, man.
services. Where did it go? Where did it deploy this thing to? Okay. We'll just go to the one I already have. So you will see it in a resource list somewhere. Should have been on that homepage. We'll just go to this other one that I have. It's essentially the same thing. I just spun up. And then once you do that, then you get this link off to Azure OpenAI Studio. You also in here, Chris, have your endpoints and keys. So
Hmm.
this is what you'll use on the back end of your app to connect to the AI service. So through the API call that you make to OpenAI, it'll ask for your endpoint, which is the URI for this instance, and then a key, which obviously locks other people out of using that resource. So it the uh, the resource knows this is your app making that call. So you don't have somebody going rogue with um, your instance and like burning up a bunch of money.
Right.
So you always want to keep those keys private. Um, GitHub actually does a really good job of this, by the way, and it's probably something that is machine learning powered. But if you publish keys to uh, GitHub, usually it will find those and alert you of it. And then a lot of the services as well, like, OpenAI, for example, not this OpenAI, but the public one will scan, um, GitHub for those keys, and it will
Mhm.
cancel those, it'll close those endpoints and make you reissue new keys. So there are things to help you if you goof up, and I believe those are things that are kinda like, a machine learning based technology,
Mhm.
because it's gotta parse through all of that data and go, "Oh, these are keys for this particular service," right?
Right.
So, and then another place you could see AI being used right here is right in the cloud itself.
Good old Copilot.
Yep, Copilot is right here in Azure. So you can come in here and ask it Azure specific things, and it's kind of meta that it's right here. Um, so let's go ahead and jump over to Azure OpenAI Studio, and we'll take a quick look at that, and then we'll maybe talk about some other things that are out there. And please stop me if you have questions, Chris. Like,
Oh,
more
no,
than
I'm
try to
soaking it
answer.
up like a sponge, bro.
So, from one portal to another, this is Azure OpenAI Studio, and this lets you do more things with the OpenAI platform. And in here, you'll find the ability to build your own uh, OpenAI, like chat bot platform
Mhm.
of your own. Like you can build your own, train it on your own data, all of that stuff. You can create your own assistants. You can create your own chats. You can add data models here. Um, and then there's all these various playgrounds where you can try these things out. So the images is probably one that's kind of fun. You can jump over to images, and you've probably seen these services online as well. This is probably the same one. This is Dolly 2. So a lot of these models are the same from platform to platform as well. So I don't know if you've done any reading on these or played with any of them, but
I wanted to play with them, but, like, I thought I might have been seeing things like it's subscription service, like, you have to pay to use them, and
Mhm.
I just wasn't in the ballpark of paying. Like, I wanted to create some cool images and stuff, but I'm like, "How can I do this for free?" And there's only actually, I don't even know of any that, like, are free to use, so
Yeah, so we can actually look at that real quick while we're on the topic of Copilot. So if you go to copilot.microsoft.com, you can actually play around with these. They give you so many tokens, which is like using uh, the service for, and the tokens aren't like a one for one type of thing, but you'll
Mhm,
spend X amount of tokens to generate an image depending on how big the prompt for that is.
mhm.
But in here, let's see if this one. Sometimes this is scoped to your organization as well. So I'm trying to see if this is the progress one or if this is, I think this is the public one. Yeah, this is on my Gmail. So you could come in here and prompt it to create text, but you can also do images. I'm trying to figure out, they might have moved some things around in here. It used to be an image page. This seemed to have worked as well. I think they merged the prompts. So there used to be separate prompts for all of this. Okay. So this essentially, I think, hits the same. Again, it's all going to be Dolly. But David was helping me a little bit there, Chris. So there used to be separate prompts for all of this stuff. And I don't remember if it was under plugins. No, that's not it either. This is more uh, specific. So there used to be a sidebar somewhere on here that would be like, do you want to create an image? Do you want to do this type of thing? And it
Mhm.
looks like they've merged this all into the prompt now. So I said, let's create an image, and it just started creating an image.
Huh.
So I could do new topic here. Say, um, let's see, create an image for a podcast um, intro. that, let's see, podcast intro. The podcast will be talking about AI topics
On Fridays.
there you go. The podcast airs every Friday. The show has 2 hosts, and
One host is tattooed, and the other is not.
let's see. There's an old guy.
Old guy.
The image should be like we can give it kind of a style idea too, like what like should be like 80s retro or something.
Yeah. Or no, what about, let's
Oh,
see. Since it's spooky season, let's do a Halloween theme.
there we go.
Because it would be sweet, like, if it generated our characters and, like, I had a Michael Myers mask on and you had a Jason mask on, right? I think with microphones. If it could do that, that would be sweet.
Yeah, so I changed it up just a little bit. So create an image of a podcast intro or for a podcast intro depicting 2 characters. The podcast talks about AI topics. The podcast airs every Friday. The show has 2 hosts. One has tattoos. The other's an old guy. The image should be 80s retro with a Halloween vibe.
I
So
dig
the
it.
more data you feed this, usually the better or more fine-tuned it is towards what you want. And
Yeah.
then, of course, we want it to be more creative too.
And that's called prompt engineering, correct? When you
Yes.
generate the most concise, detailed message you're delivering to the AI.
Mhm. Exactly. And what also happens behind the scenes with many of these image generation ones that I've seen is if you don't put a lengthy prompt in there,
Mhm.
it will use the chat GPT large language model like text generation, like the text gen AI stuff to like if you put in like I want an image of 2 guys for a podcast, it will put that into a like a chat GPT prompt and spit out a bigger piece of text behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
So it'll say, on the backside, it's like, generate a more detailed description for this prompt, which will then give you back like 2 paragraphs worth of stuff that it
Right.
generated, and then feed that to the image thing. So it actually can generate an image that's,
Gotcha.
not 2 circles with googly eyes. Um, so you will see that on the backside of some of this stuff. So we could do this, and because I said create an image, it's gonna go off to Dolly. And Dolly is one of the image generation models. And then you get like a funky animation. And this is all good to show because we could build something like this eventually on the show. So this is going to run. And then while it's running, I'll point out here, this is your tokens that I was talking about.
Okay.
So 69 tokens. Um, this number will go down when you reach the bottom. You can still use the service, I believe, but it
Mhm.
will it deprioritizes you. So
Gotcha.
like you're gonna take like that took 30 seconds or something to
Yeah.
create. It might take minutes or longer, it might be like 30 minutes or something
Yeah.
before you get your thing back.
So a token in this case would just be like a token, like at a Chuck E. Cheese or something like that, right? Where you want to, for every play you got to put a token in the machine.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I don't think it's a one for one. So the word token here is very up in the air, much like you would find at say like a Dave and Buster's. Like
Okay.
how you like load your card with like 600
Right.
tokens,
Yeah.
and then like you might go to one machine and it's like, well, this one's 12 tokens to play,
Right.
this
Right.
one's like 50. and none of it really equates to like a dollar anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, the same thing is kind of happening in this space where, for one, I don't know if these are probably a currency that is within Copilot itself. Then also behind the scenes, the term token is being used with AI as far as text inputs go. So a string of text is broken into tokens, and tokens can be either a word, a part of a word, something that the AI is using to predict
Got
that
you.
next set
Okay.
of sentences. So if you put in like a prompt like we did, it was about 3 sentences or a paragraph, that might be several hundred tokens,
Oh, okay.
and, the services on the back end of that can charge based on the number of tokens, and you can limit the number of tokens. So somebody can't come in, say you're building something for work, you're maybe generating some content for a blog post. A blog post is going to be, 1,500 words or something like that.
Right.
So you can kind of ballpark the number of tokens it will take to generate that blog post.
Hmm.
What you want to limit people from doing is taking like, okay, I'm going to paste this novel in. That's 900 pages of text,
Right.
and then like you get a bill for like $10,000 because somebody thought they were going to be um, clever and send like so much text in the prompt that it takes a month to actually output something and just burns up a bunch of CPU time. So you can limit things based on the number of tokens. This did a pretty weird job.
I like the
Um,
bottom one in the corner, the bottom right one. I dig that
this is a
one.
yeah. This one gives some Manson vibes, though. Does it not?
Well, you're tattooed and I'm tattooed, so
It
that's
yeah.
that's
Maybe it's the
funny.
forehead tattoos that are
I like it though. I mean, we're covered, so that's cool.
yeah.
Now, so with if we were to choose one of these images, let's just say, for fun, right? And let's say we created a podcast, right? We wanted to take our stream and make a podcast, right? If we used one of these, if we wanted to use one of these as like a cover art, would we be able to say, "Hey, I want to take this image and like give it the coordinates of the image in that four, right? That we were given. Could we prompt that image to put in the title of the podcast is Friday or AI Fridays or whatever with Ed and Chris? And would it be able to take that image and replace that text with the text you prompt it to give?
See, now this is where things get a little bit tricky. It will generate a brand new image.
Oh,
It
okay.
will then try to do that, but
Hmm.
you're gonna lose the characters here. At least this is the experience I've had in the past. I don't know why it's highlighting either.
Hmm.
Oh, you can do a little bit of editing, I guess. So if we took this one and said, because this text at the top just is meaningless.
Right.
Replace the text at the top of the image with, let's just see what it does. Like, this is where um, I've noticed that things don't always go as you would hope.
Hmm.
It does also like keep a running history of these things, so you don't lose the one that you originally had, but it's going to
Yeah.
create 4 brand new images based
Yeah.
on that. So it's going to try to marry up what it had. So it kind of like, see what I mean? We lost the original
Yeah.
characters. But it did manage to generate the text kind of, and AI is bad with text. So it's missing the I in almost all of these. This one, it's got 2 eyes,
Right.
but it seemed to do the word full stack okay.
This isn't, I mean, I dig this a lot because I have
Mhm.
ideas, right? I wanted to restart, my podcast, Tales from the Script, and I wanted to start a paranormal podcast, either solo or with a friend of mine. And it's hard finding designers to make really cool, cover art for a podcast, right?
Yeah,
Especially if you don't like have the
especially
money
on
up
a
front.
budget,
Right,
right?
exactly. Like I might not have like somebody might charge $500 for this, and I am 100% in support of artists and paying artists what they deserve, what they're worth, and even tipping. I'm a big tipper, especially when it comes to tattoo artists and barbers, and because a barber is an artist or a stylist is an artist, right? But if you are on a budget and you need something quick and you want something really cool, like if the image that's generated is accurate, right? If like it shows a hand and there are five fingers that look anatomically correct, and parts of the body look normal without text. If there's no text at all, I mean, it's you can take that image and then just put text over top of it, right? Like in
Yeah.
Photoshop or Canva or whatever the case may be, or no, don't even put anything on top of it and just have that as the cover art without letters. I think that's extremely powerful.
Yeah, I think these are good at also helping communicate between normals and designers. So one of the big problems I had when I was doing any kind of design work is people think differently. Like folks that are artistic and creative have kind of a mind's eye and they can see things like I read an article about this was really interesting. Like if I told everybody in the chat room to picture an image of an apple, like there's
Hmm.
people out there that literally just cannot. They
Yeah,
cannot see an apple by thinking of it. They know an apple's red. If they saw one, they could recognize it. But if you told them to envision one, it's just not there. Like it's
yeah.
just not a capability they have. Um, and growing up, like, didn't understand that was a thing. Like, I thought everybody could do some of the things that I could do in my head. Getting, growing up and then reading things like that, you just start to understand, like, obviously everybody's experiences are different, but even the way your mind works internally is different from person to person. So, long story short, you start talking to people that want to have something designed for them, and they literally have no way to communicate that to you.
Hmm.
And I think tools like this, you could either share with somebody or they could go off on their own. Um, and they could come in here and, you know, come up with, well, of these four images that it created, is it going to give me those four back? We were given 4. So if we were oh, yeah, we can go back this way. So they could come to you and say, "If these 4 images, like, I liked this from this one and that from the other one,
Right, right,
and then I want my text over the top. Can you make that?"
right.
Then as a designer, you have at least some guidance now of what that person was trying to come up with,
Yeah.
rather than them trying to give you this
Yeah.
and have,
Well, I think this would be good too, especially in the context of tattoos, right? Like as a tattoo collector, clearly,
yeah.
when you were trying to get, when you want a custom piece done, like it's personally for me, it's hard to, and I know Dave can, Dave can talk about this as well. Um, do you have any tattoos, Ed? I don't think you have any
No,
tattoos, do you?
no, I
Okay.
don't.
It's hard to communicate to an artist of what you want, right? And back in the day, we would bring in pictures and reference material and magazines and like cut stuff out and give like a sort of like a file to your
Yeah.
tattoo artist and be like, "Hey, I like this, I like this, I like this. Can we do this with that?" And your artist would take that, and before the days of Photoshop and being able to use like what's the tool that people use on iPads to draw stuff?
Oh, shoot. I know, Procreate?
Procreate. Before like the
Yeah.
days of Procreate, your tattoo artist would take those pictures that you give them and they would lay them out on a sheet of paper and then photocopy that and then try to figure that out or rearrange things and sketch it all out on carbon paper. That way they could have a stencil ready, right? With the advancements with what the iPad did and Procreate and this right here, you could work with your artist or even do this on your own. Say what you're looking for, right, in your prompt, because now you can be super specific and you can
Mhm.
have time to think about it. generate those images and take those images to your artist and be like, well, I like a little bit of this from here, I like a little bit of that from there. Share these images with your artist, and then they can start building your tattoo off of that. I think that's really powerful for the tattoo industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see a lot of places where this is useful and still not, quote, replacing somebody's job, right?
Right.
I think that's one of the big fears that people have. And then, as you saw, like, it's not like exact, like, we're not getting the text that we want, and it's not great. But if you were to hand this off to his designer, they could redo this. And at least
100%.
they have a starting point. Maybe they could reuse some of the assets that are here. David was talking about MS Designer that it'll actually drop it into a file. Oh, it's showing Designer down here. This is Designer, I think. Um, David, it's Designer behind the scenes. And there's like a companion app for this that will give you like some of the vectors and things, I believe.
Hmm.
So it's a good starting point. One of the things I've noticed that it has flaws with is if there is something in the text that it has a strong relationship with. So, for example, I was doing something for a side project and I wanted to generate an image of a witch, but I didn't want a hat. So I kind of wanted like that goth, like female
Mhm.
thing, like kind of silhouette, and it kept generating a hat no matter
Mhm.
what I did. And I was like, all right, I want the same image, but I don't want a hat. And because I had prompted it already, like I said, I want a witch with no hat, yada, yada, yada. I did that like 3 times. And then I was like, take the hat off the witch. It literally came back in text and said, I already gave you that. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
but you didn't. Like I can see
Right.
the hat. so
Right.
so like the term witch implies hat to this thing, and there was no getting around it.
Yeah.
So I would have had to change the entire prompt. I think I ended up just giving up on that and like hacking it out in
Mhm.
Photoshop or something. So yeah, I've used this on side projects for fun things where again I wouldn't have paid a person to do it. It was just like a side fun project type of
Yeah.
thing, but I really wanted something cool like a logo for it was like for a video game I was playing, and it let you upload your own content for your character, and I
Mhm.
was like generating all this AI stuff so I could customize my character rather than try to like hand draw it or whatever.
Right.
So it was really fun for that, but and I could see where you could use it in a business sense too, but
Yeah.
not to replace somebody, but to augment the way somebody works and speed
Right.
things up for
Or,
them.
even, spark more creativity, right? And collaboration, cross-functionally.
Absolutely. And all of this is powered by this AI model. So most of the stuff that you're seeing out there is a front end for some AI model. There are dozens of AI models. There's a few for images. Um, there's a couple available in the Azure portal, which I think did it sign me out? Hope not. That's hard. Okay, there we go. And then depending on the quality that comes out of these and the compute resources needed to create them, you'll be charged differently. So you can choose between the models. It looks like Dolly is the only ones that are offered on the Azure portal. So Dolly 2 is going to be the earlier generation of it, but it's going to be cheaper,
Mhm.
probably. It's not always the case, but usually is that the compute power is less for, the older model, and then, they either change the algorithm or add more training data or whatever it is to come up with the next version of it. It might be a little more processor intensive. So, depending on what your needs are and your budget is, you might wanna swap between these, and then you'll see in here as well, I have this one, and it just says image demos. That is an AI model that I have deployed to my Azure Studio.
Hmm.
So the concept here is you either take one of the existing ones and deploy it, and then it just gives you a custom name for it, but it's really just Dolly 2 or 3. Or I can add my own training data to the existing model and come up with a custom deployment.
That's cool.
So that's something that's more advanced that I haven't been able to do yet, but that feature does exist here in AI Studio. Um, so this screen that you see here in the studio is this pretty much the same as the one that's in Copilot. It's just a little more dumbed down. It's a little more bare bones, I guess. I don't think it gives you multiple images back. I think that's just part of the model itself. Let's see here. I gotta close that out. Yeah, so I think it gives you multiple images back. We could try a quick one. Or let's do this. Let's take the same prompt off of here and just drop it in the Azure portal one. Drop that in there. Say generate, and it's going to do something similar back. Again, it's using the same AI model, so
Hmm.
it's really just a different user interface on top of the same
Right.
thing, right? Same backend. So yeah, okay. So it only did give me one, and there's going to be options in here that do different things as well. So we've got the image size, what type or style of image to be generated, and then the quality of the image. This one, if you expose this to your users as like a flag, could change the price of
Right.
generating that image.
That
The
makes
size
sense.
as well. So those two things you might have to pay for. So you want to be careful with those. And then one of us has identified as a woman in this one.
Those tattoos look cool though.
So, yeah. No, it's a cool image though. Like it's coming up with cool stuff. It's definitely following most of the prompt. Like it has like a little bit of 80s like coloring and
Yeah, I dig it.
chrome text and stuff like that. And again, the text is terrible. Like what is that saying down there?
Right.
It's trying to say podcast, but it's
I think, yeah,
hallucinating
podcast
it.
every Friday.
Yeah. And then like again, there's just a different UI on this. And this is just to test out the service, right? Um, This is kind of showing you what you could possibly do in your own app. And then up here it has view code. So we can actually just take this out and put it in a Python app.
Oh, wow.
There's C# here. This is something you're not getting off the Copilot app.
Right.
So this is pretty much the code that would be required to do a very simple API call here. And this is something you would want to put on your back end of your app. And the reason I say the back end, not the front end, is if you look in here, there is a key. You don't want to put this in the front end of your app because any front end code, doesn't matter what platform you're on, those keys are going to be public, like where you can see them. You could try to encrypt them, but if it's on the front end, uh, the deal with front end code is, and again, this doesn't matter if you're on Android and it's an APK. Uh, iOS might be a little bit harder, but if you try hard enough, I'm sure you could figure it out. If I have to download your code to my device to run it, then it's open season. Like I'm going to be able to
Right.
get into your code some way, shape, or form. So, like on Android, an APK is essentially packaged up code. You can get into that APK, you can dig around, you can decompile, you can find that key. It also has to be sent over the wire. Like you have to send the key to the service. You could intercept it through that as well. So while the app is in process of talking to the server, there is a possibility that that key could get sniffed out and could be reused. So usually you want to keep this type of thing on your back end. Like you don't want to have it on the front end of your system. That's not like 100% of the time, but general rule of thumb is it's going to go on the back end. There might be like one-off cases where maybe the user is responsible for putting in the API key, and you probably want to do some type of encryption on there and to try to keep it as private as you can. But that's usually not the way these things are used, but they can be.
What is
Uh,
it what does it
so
have an what's the option for, like, a JavaScript integration? Is it just
yeah,
Node?
we've got JavaScript here. Yeah, it's going to be probably you want to put this on a Node um, application.
Yeah.
So it gives it to you. It looks like it's in the form of just a module that you could add to your application, but I would drop that into like a Node server or something.
Yeah. Hmm, cool.
And then these are just snippets to get you started. It's not all best practices and like a full implementation of it. So like in here, it's talking about writing some stuff out to the console. So it's assuming there's a console present there. Um, you could probably just run this in a what are those things called, like a REPL or something, and try it out.
Mhm.
And then it gives you an idea of where to start in your code base. These are really super helpful things, though. At least it shows you like kind of the process here, and it's not that difficult, right? You don't. It's 26 lines of code for C sharp. We got in JavaScript here, 26 lines of JavaScript. It's about the
Mhm.
same. Um, 18 lines of Python. We're not talking about like pages and pages of code.
Right.
This is very simple stuff. Essentially, you're sending the prompt to the server and then sending an image back. Like it's just two arguments you're sending back and forth.
Mhm.
And of course the keys and the endpoint. So it's not very complex to use these things. It's complex to train these things.
Right.
Like the complexity's been done for you already.
Yeah.
Let's check chat real quick. Marcus Voice Coder has joined us. Thank you for joining us, and Thindle as well. Let's see. Just a little chat going on in the background here. If anybody has questions, let us know. Thindle said 100% of his .NET 9 presentation images are AI generated. That's another good place for these is like, just coming up with something, presentation for work or whatever it
Yeah.
is you need, some quick imagery. So that's uh, kind of the playground area. So you've got, uh, you can make your own assistant in here, name it, and all of that. Uh, the image one we just tried out. What's under completions? I think this is like the chat. So chat was up there. What is completions? This is all brand new, by the way. And if you don't believe me, there's a little switch to the old look button
Hmm.
up at the top. So some of these might be in beta still. I don't know. It's not loading up. So I'm not going to find out what completions is today. Is that's kind of ironic or something, right? Completions isn't working. It's not completing. Let's see. Yeah, this is a chat thing with all the bells and whistles. So this would be like your chat prompt type of a scenario. There's tools for fine tuning. This is again where you want to take one of those models and add some extra training to it. And then if we look under deployments, these are the ones I was talking about where you can create your own deployments for the models. So a lot of the services out there, they're just like you're going to use Dolly 3, or you might have some options of which uh, public, model that everybody else is using. You can use one of those. In Azure, you can fine tune a model and deploy it here.
Mhm.
So add your own training data to it, have it retrained, and then deploy it in this section. And then when it's in here and it's deployed, then your app can talk to it. So the model, if you train a model with a bunch of data and don't deploy it, like you can't hit it from an API anywhere. It's not deployed yet.
Gotcha.
So these give it a URL and a key uh, to access it from your app. Quotas is where you'd set up like your pricing stuff, but again, I think this is all still in beta and there's no cost to it. So that doesn't do anything. So you could set up budgets and things. So you hit so much traffic, your app would then, somebody type in a prompt and it'd be like you'd have to code in some kind of response to say, the service isn't available right now because we're too cheap to pay their bills. So this is the Open AI Studio. This is just a tip of the iceberg of what's available in the Azure portal. There's tons of stuff in here. And this is just Microsoft. There's other resources out there as well. We're just looking at something that the company that you work for um, was tweeting about just the other day. So DigitalOcean has the paper space, and I'm just kind of riffing from what I see here on the page, but it looks like this is a model building and training tool that is similar to something I've seen in the Azure portal. And this is available in Azure as well, but it looks like you guys have your own spin on it. And the idea here, these are great for learning, by the way. If you're not an ML expert, these things can really kind of introduce you to, because I'm a visual learner, they can introduce you to the process of building a model because they have these drag and drop widgets. And what you do in here is the concept of machine learning is you have a bunch of data. Uh, Sometimes that data, well, most times that data has either outliers in it or you know there's data that doesn't apply to what you're trying to train and all of that. You gotta kind of fit that data to what you want the model to learn from. So, if there's fields in there that are like null, somebody didn't enter data, data wasn't captured, you might want to throw those away. Maybe there's things that are outliers. So for most of the time, you expect whatever this process is doing. Let's say taking taxis, for example. You're trying to predict taxi fares. Well, one guy decided he was going to take a cab 100 miles, but that's not the normal, right? So you might want to weed out outliers like that. Take
Mhm.
things that are abnormal out of your data set. You would do that within these tools. You actually get like data formatting tools and things, and then you can chain together via drag and drop different processes around the data to structure it, and then identify um, columns within the data sets that you want to train on and what type of importance they have. Um, Maybe what types they are. Like maybe there's a bunch of fields that look like they're text, they're stored as strings, but they're actually numeric. So you can go in and drag and drop tools in there to format different columns to change their data types. And then you can actually drop different AI models in there for the system to train on. And then you drag and drop the outputs, that you want to get from that model is in regards to like analysis. Maybe you want to drop some analysis tools in there. And you have all this in a nice drag and drop design surface. And then you hit run and it goes through all of the steps rather than hand coding everything out. So that's what this looks like to me on the surface. Again, I don't know. I mean, I think I did a pretty decent job just by looking at the screenshots here because we have like pre-trained model, and it's going through these different steps here.
Yeah, it's a
But
pretty cool tool.
yeah, it looks like you might have something like that there, and then it's got a bunch of GPUs on the back end um, to like scale out the training. So, see, develop. You got your notebooks, and then you can train it and then deploy it all from one centralized location. And this is something that you wouldn't do, say, on your desktop machine. This
Right.
has massive amounts of GPUs to throw at the problem because a lot of these models take terabytes of data sometimes, and or more, right? This is
Mhm.
something I talked about years ago, in the session that I had was we make I think at the time, this was like 5, 10 years ago, uh, we are uploading zettabytes of data to the internet every year. Like,
So mu
that's a lot of zeros.
so much.
It's so much data that there's no human possible way to parse through it all.
Mhm.
Like, you cannot sit down, like, take, for example, like, something like, YouTube, all right? You've got people uploading, say, terabytes of video on a daily or hourly basis. How are you going to check that video for, things that are, um what's
Like
the right way
copyright
to put
stuff.
this? There's copyright, there's, like, obscenity type of
Right,
violations,
just like
like
NSFW stuff, like
yeah, yeah,
copyright
not safe,
stuff.
that's a good way
Y
to say it.
Yeah,
Not safe for work,
yeah.
so you wanna do all of that. You're not gonna put a person in that seat and
No,
have them.
you're gonna need not there's I don't even think that there's enough people, like you were saying, there's not enough people in the world, I think, to even do that kind of work, right? You have to have something that is
Yeah,
doing that for you quickly, right? Because you have to train and I see where you're going with this too, like, not every person is gonna know, every single song in the world, right? But if you could upload, like, a global discography to a model and it learns, every single song that's ever been published, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Then they can identify those songs if they're playing in videos and then, flag that as a copyright issue.
Yeah, a lot of these things, the way I understand that they work may not be accurate. Is they kind of like fingerprint, so you get kind of you may not study like every song ever
Mhm.
created, but you might take like portions of those songs that are
Oh, yeah.
either popular or repeated throughout the
Yeah.
song, and you kind of get a fingerprint of what it is, and then you can
Right.
apply that fingerprint to other pieces of work. And that's why like sometimes you'll see like people try to skirt these things by like flipping a video on its
Right.
axis and re-uploading it, and sometimes
Yeah.
that'll fool it. And
Yeah.
there's like little like nuanced things that'll kind of get it past these filters
Yeah.
sometimes. But I think the general point was like this AI stuff is a necessity, like more than it's a
Right.
convenience. Like
Yeah.
it's required for the amount of data that we're processing and
Yeah.
putting up on, these services. So, we need these things.
And I mean, it's not
Uh,
new either. Like AI, it's
no.
not new, right? Yeah, it's be like blown up on the front end or blown up on the back end, blown up in web, like our world of web and software. But it's been a thing, right? It's always
Yeah.
been a thing, even if like the most minimal things that we do on a day-to-day basis that we would never think is because of AI is because of AI, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you really think about it, like, there needs to be a way the copyright thing for is a perfect example, like, there needs to be a way for YouTube to pick out a chorus or a melody or a riff out of a song, and
Yeah.
they can't just be a team of people doing that because there's just way too much that's being uploaded on a daily. Not just, YouTube videos, but you have the YouTube Shorts, and you have YouTube Live, right? And you have streams that are getting pushed out from StreamYard to YouTube, right? So all these things are happening on a day-to-day basis that we're not privy to, and when you start really thinking about it, you can start seeing these things in the real world that you might have never thought about before, where there is some level of AI under the hood.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of the generative AI stuff that really got people to take notice. It's
Mhm.
like you said, this stuff's been around for, phew, let's see, 75 years,
Yeah.
something like that.
I mean, even
Um,
look like back in the day, like when Sublime came up with, um, I guess you could say when Sublime came out with Emmet, or like code completion in an editor, right? Like an editor is trained to figure out what your next thing is going to be, right? Like if you're writing a JavaScript function, Like before Copilot was ever a thing, like you would get, and even in Visual Studio, right? You'd get those code completion parts where you could just tab through and pick what you want to help generate your code. That is AI at the core, right? It might not be super fancy AI, but there's some type of AI happening.
Yeah. Uh, this all started back in the 50s, and the things that really held it back were like storage medium, like you just can't store that amount of data, and then processing power and the memory to push through that data through the processor. Like those three things. Like we got the processor speed up, in the 90s, and then memory kind of came along around the same time frame, and digital storage like really hit a boom when solid state got you know
Mhm.
usable, and the speed of solid state came up as well. So like that's kind of like we had this convergence of like all the technology required to have it happen within the last like 20 years. But the concepts have been around for way longer than that.
Yeah.
Um, and we, there's been some very smart people putting this stuff together for quite a long time, and now it's being commoditized. And I
Mhm.
think that that commoditization of it has helped. And then the generative AI stuff kind of came out of nowhere, um, and they're trying to figure out. And I mean they, I mean like all of us are trying to figure out where that whole thing fits.
Right.
Um, but I think this kind of gave us a pretty good overview of at least where the Gen AI stuff lives on the web. That was just the Microsoft instance of it. There's also the OpenAI, um, which it's very similar to the portal I showed you, because again, this all get first of all, Microsoft owns this as well, or is part of the OpenAI initiative. Um, if they don't own it outright, I can't remember anymore. There there was a bunch of stuff that happened about a year ago with this. But, you can come through this, service here and create your same, deployment of OpenAI and use it directly from here. Then, there are other more single tasked AIs as well. So, like, if you're doing facial recognition, there's one here in Azure for that. Computer vision kinda has a bunch of stuff in it. This is something we'll probably play with, Chris. I think you'll like this one. This is instead of generating images, we're gonna send it images and
Mm.
let the AI analyze the image and tell us things about it.
Cool.
So this is really like handy if you want to like process a bunch of photos or process photos that somebody's uploading into one of your services and auto tag them, because I know you used to do a lot of accessibility work, and the alt text is like a big deal, right?
Right.
Well, if people don't enter alt text, you could have the AI generate stuff for you. And what this cognitive vision stuff can do is it can generate tags really reliably. So you send it a picture of like some animals, and it's like, okay, these are animals, but they're giraffes. They're yellow. They are in a plain next to some
That's
water.
cool.
Like it does all of that. And then you could even take those tags, feed that into generative AI, and say, write a sentence that, or paragraph based on these tags,
Mhm.
store that in your database, so you only have to run the service that one time. And then next time somebody comes into your system and searches, I need a picture of giraffes that somebody uploaded. It's already tagged. It's easy to find, and then it comes up and it's got a description and everything already with it. So cognitive vision can do that. It can pick colors out of images. It can do all kinds of cool
Cool.
stuff. We'll play with that one. Speech is another one we could play with. So the chat bots that you see in here, like this little use microphone button,
Mhm.
you can add that capability using a speech service.
Nice.
So you click on the microphone, you talk, and then it takes that, converts it to text. Your app then takes the text and sends it off to the other service to get processed for uh, generation or whatever it is. So there's a bunch of stuff in this as well, that you could find unitask uh, AI tools to add to your apps. So we can set up a maybe a project sometime soon, whether it's next show or whatever, to maybe test some of these out in an application scenario and see how to use those.
Cool. I dig it.
But we're headed towards the top of the show here. About we're aiming for around noon, but I think we covered a pretty good breadth of topics
Yeah.
today. Unless you had any more questions, Chris, I think we'll go ahead and plan some things for the next show.
Yeah. I'm good, man. Let's start planning.
Awesome. Yeah, hopefully, viewers that are watching, if you're finding any of this helpful, please feel free to chime in chat or hit us up on social media. Let us know what you'd like to see on the show. Maybe you have questions you didn't get to ask, or you're watching this recorded and didn't get to ask them live, and we could cover it on the next episode. So we are available to kind of take some questions and give some answers. That's what we'd like to do with the Friday Full Stack Friday show, is kind of figure out what practical uses people are looking for with AI, or show some examples of, rather than talk about buzzwords and marketing that frankly nobody understands yet. Like that's that's like the elephant in the room with all of this. It's like, yeah, it's cool. It looks like magic, but what do I do with it?
Hmm.
Right? How do I make money with it?
Right.
And we'll try to cover that every Friday.
Let's
See you
go.
soon.
Peace.